Good morning. Good morning. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist, and welcome to the International Mastermind Association Think and Grow Rich show. I'm going to be your key host for today, and I am so excited. We're going to have an incredible guest and an incredible conversation about decision, the seventh step to riches for Napoleon Hill's success formula, Think and Grow Rich. Grab your book, nudge some friends, text some people, because this is going to be an incredible show. I want to talk to you a little bit about why this is important, because a lot of times people will think that once they see someone with success, that they just made a decision to be successful and they jumped into it and everything was just smooth as silk. Well, we know that that's not the case, and but we don't really appreciate how important it is to make a decision, how important that is. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that with an incredible guest. I'll tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest is Don Green. He is a resident of Wise, Virginia, which is the birthplace of Napoleon Hill, and he's also the executive director of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So this is the guy that makes sure that philosophy stays front and center in everyone's mind, and that people are living it in order to achieve their best dreams. He has been an entrepreneur for many, many years, starting with his first business venture of selling tickets to have people see his pet bear. So if you can turn a profit from having people come see your pet bear, you know you've got a business mind on your hands. So looking forward to this conversation, looking forward to hearing from you. So we definitely want you to chat. We are streaming live, Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you're watching this. Definitely comment so that we can bring you into the conversation. But it's not just me. So I've got a team of co-hosts with me. I'm going to bring in my first, and that is Dr. Peter James. Dr. Peter James is joining us from beautiful, beautiful San Juan, Puerto Rico. So how is San Juan, Dr. Peter?
It's better than advertised, Galen. Good morning to you. Good morning to everybody. Excited to be here. The beauty of this being virtual, we can stream in from everywhere, and very excited to dive into Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. But not even just that, Galen. We got the executive director of the foundation who is here, who can maybe bless us with some gems from Napoleon Hill's great book, of course, but it may be even a little bit of background about this decision topic. So I'm excited to just listen and learn about Napoleon Hill from a different vantage point. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, helping you to shift your mindset. And I'm hoping that all of you who have joined us this morning can really shift your mindset as we hear from our distinguished guest this morning. So Galen, it's going to be a great show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking forward to it. And you know, Miss Ann wouldn't let us do this by ourselves. So Miss Ann is joining us all the way from beautiful Las Vegas. So she's attending a conference, but she just was so afraid to let me and Peter handle this conversation by ourselves. So Miss Ann, welcome to the conversation. As exciting as Dr. Peter and I are making it out to be.
Well, I think it all starts really with the principle. And the principle is decision. And the philosophy is, espoused by the book Think and Grow Rich. And who better to share the principle and the philosophy and the decisions with us other than Don Green? And when you think about the words from Napoleon Hill, when he tells us that this decision is the seventh step toward riches, is all founded on all of the steps that preceded it. And so the decision to not procrastinate. And I say for me, as we get started with this program, the decision to become a certified coach with the Napoleon Hill Foundation, we want to encourage everybody to decide to do this, but only if you have a desire, Galen. Not you, Galen, but we know you have one. But we're talking about our listeners. If our listeners have a desire for a better quality of life in every area of your life, because it's not just about the money. The money just makes you more of whoever you already are. but the decision to become certified and really go deep into these principles and this philosophy with the foundation, I think is really a good decision to decide to make. So, Galen, let's get going.
Yes, yes. Let's bring in our special guest. Mr. Don Green is the executive director of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And since 2000, he's been leveraging his vast experience and knowledge in finance to really bring this principle, bring that foundation to the prominence that it has, continues to have today. Don specializes in discussing not only his personal experiences, but how they connect and how they springboard from the principles of Napoleon Hill. So, Don, welcome to the show. Come on into the conversation, share a little bit about your background, and let's get this conversation started.
Oh, great, guys. I said I got up early this morning on Saturday morning. It's usually time to do odds and ends, but it's obviously, I'm past 80 years old and I absolutely love what I do with a passion. People ask me, Don, when you going to retire? Retire from what? I got the best position in the world. Uh, you know, I'm helping 60 some kids go to school. I'm able to do lots and lots and lots of things. And I try to take care of myself. I walk 5 miles a day. I'm heavily involved in lots and lots of different things. And because I enjoy doing them, I enjoy doing a difference. I know what the material's done for me. And I taught this material 12 times as a night class when I was working as a bank president. And a lot of the youngsters keep up with me, not all of them, but many of them do. And I see what it's done for them. I could tell you story after story after story. And it's just, it warms your heart. It took me a while. But, there's only one way in life that we can truly be happy. If we set out to get a black Mercedes and a gold Rolex and $1 million and think we'll be happy, then one day we'll be singing Peggy Lee's song. Is this all there is? The one permanent way to become happy is simply to make somebody else happy. And I think that's the way we was put together because we can never have enough toys. I mean, there's always something else, and they may last for a little while, but our permanent happiness is in making a difference in other people's lives. And I said, I know what it's done for me. My dad crawled around in the coal mines and about $6 a day. When we asked for a quarter, we would hear Mom, oh, honey, we can't waste our money. Your daddy crawls down in them old coal mines and he may get hurt. He might even get killed. And we wouldn't have no money. Said, won't you go ask Uncle Leaf he mow his yard? Said, didn't he give you a quarter the last time you mowed it? Said, he don't have no boys. He just got them girls. And of course, it was a push mower. And we learned to make money. In the beginning, it was necessity. And it curbed me through life till I got good enough at it to I could help some other people. And that's what made the difference. And I mean, I love the material. I could talk and talk and talk. You probably want to shut me off. But I know what it's done for me. I mean, we can talk for the rest of the day on opportunity. Sometimes our ship don't come in. We have to swim out where it is.
Boy,
nobody is going to likely come to your door, knock on it on a Saturday morning and say, boy, if I got a deal for you. It's not going to happen. And you can sit and wait till you turn till all your hair falls out. But and I've been asked this question 1,000 times, so I'll go ahead and share it. How did I get a job with Napoleon Hill Foundation? CEO. Come to a little old town, as I told my friend Polly from Nigeria, who's given us $300,000 in contribution over the years, and that's another story. But I told him, he said he'd come from Nigeria, and I invited him. He said, Don, when I come to your city, I said, Chief Polly, we got 3 red lights, and 2 of them we don't need. It's just prestige. 2 of them we don't even need. I said, but I read the material. I was working as a bank president, and I spoke at a historical society at the Presbyterian Church where I've attended for many years. And I remember there were 20 some odd people. 2 things I remember. I'm in Pound, Virginia, mind you, on the river. This is where Hill was born. And 10 minutes from here. And 2 things I distinctly remember. One, they didn't pay me, okay? I didn't get paid. I mean, I'm not used to that now. But the second one was they didn't even feed me. But I enjoyed it. And I was listening to an audio tape cassette when I was going over And I had the idea to write the foundation. So when I got home, before I got to bed, I took me a pad out and I wrote them, and asked my secretary at the bank the next morning to send it out, and I got a reply back. So my ship didn't come in. I contacted them. I wrote them a nice letter, told them what I was doing, and they asked me to come have dinner with them in Chicago, which I did. I couldn't wait. And we had dinner and with Mr. W. Clement Stone and the board members. And Mr. Stone finally, he's called me boy. He was about 80. I wasn't no boy, but he said, boy, you know more about these books than I do. He said, you ought to be a board member. And I said, Mr. Stone, what do I have to be? And he said, you'll get the packages, you keep up with and attend the meetings, and we'll let you know what's going on. And so I served as a trustee, told the old guys at the bank, had said, Don, we'd really like to sell the bank. Some of the old guys had homes in Florida and what have you, and they were tired, no longer in business. And I said, okay, because I had a job lined up with the foundation because the only other CEO wanted to retire. His health wasn't good. And so the transition I told the people we sold to, I said, now, every bank in town will hire me. I said, I've actually got the business. And they're going to follow Don Green. I don't mean to boast or anything, but they're going to follow Don Green. And because I was there 18 years, I financed houses, never foreclosed on a house the whole time. Never, not a loan I made did I foreclose, because I would get Ann in and say, Ann, you and I got a problem. And Ann says, you got a problem. I'm almost 3 payments behind. Oh, yeah, no, but I'm that's not what I'm getting paid for. I'm not getting paid to have people 3 payments behind. I'm getting paid to have a solution. Now, what can we do? And then we'd sit and we'd work something out. In a worse situation, I would say, well, you think things are hopeless. I would recommend you put it up for sale. And that way you'll get some equity. If I sell it, there's no equity. So I think that's kind of how it come about. And I told them, and I said, I won't go to work for another bank, but I would like for you to give me a year's salary and let me keep my company car and pay my benefits. We'll do that. And they did. And I started with the foundation. And my wife said, is it really right to be paid by 2 people? And I said, Bill, honey, that's what you call a deal. It's good for them, for me not to steal their customers, and it's good for me. And she said, well, I don't understand why they do it. And I said, well, you're just not an old greedy banker is all I know. And but it worked out. It worked out absolutely beautiful. I mean, I started.
You got a whole. There's a whole lot of Napoleon Hill's principles wrapped up into that one story. Before we go to the rest of that story, I want to bring back Dr. Peter so he can share this video that we've created to help everyone understand how all these principles fit together. So, Dr. Peter.
I'm loving the story so far, especially the background on, from the Napoleon Hill perspective. And those of you who are new to Think and Grow Rich, new to this podcast for sure, listening to this video to hear how these 13 principles, these 13 chapters can really impact one's life from a broad perspective, not even just business, but life itself. And I love this video because it really just identifies and allows me to be able to reflect, hey, where am I relative to these concepts, to these principles, and to these chapters? So let's dive right on into the video.
Number 1 is desire. Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the MasterMind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
And Galen, I'm excited to dive on into the principle of decision today with Don and really identify, almost how he was very decisive in some of his actions while to lead up to be the executive director of this foundation for sure. So right back to you, Galen.
Yeah, so I'd love to bring back in our guest, Don. This is a really, really important element of the philosophy that you're the executive director of. One of the things that Napoleon Hill says is that the inability to make a decision is one of the key reasons for people who fail. Right. So this inability to make a decision, or another way of saying procrastinating, is one of the key reasons for failure. Talk us through kind of what are some of the decisions that you've made, and what are some of the challenges that you've seen people struggle with relative to this particular principle?
Well, I think to start off with, of course, we know desire. When we say desire to accomplish something, it has to be a burning desire. And there's thousands of examples. Mine was out of necessity, and then it become easier. It takes courage to make the right decision, and I think we need to say make the right decision. Because when someone comes up to you and says, Dr. Peter says, I have a hard time making a decision. No, you don't. You made a decision not to do nothing. You made a decision not to make the right decision. So it takes courage, it takes faith, but it all starts off with having a desire to accomplish something other. You know, if you have a burning passion to go to bed with something and to wake up with it and keep it on your mind and do something other about it, you may run into a lot of obstacles and so forth. But we look at obstacles as something to overcome or something to stop us. But guess what? We get to choose which one we want. We choose to let it stop us or let it propel us. I can remember sitting with Mr. Stone, and he had said, think how you get paid. You get paid when there's a problem. You solve someone's problems and you'll make money. And there's only one way you can make money legitimately, and that's sell something or other, either your goods or your services. And you find out what that is, and you have a passion for it to have someone transfer their money from them to you. And like I said, it takes faith and it takes courage. But he tells us over and over again, a burning desire is all the difference in the world. I did a fundraising in Pennsylvania at a church college with Zig Ziglar many years ago, and he said it all comes down to how bad do you want it. There's a picture in my office in 2003. Someone snapped of us, and he framed it and sent it to me, and he said, Don, God loves you, and I do too. But that says an awful lot. Is coming down to how bad do you want it. I tell the story sometimes to the younger people. They understand it. Two old gentlemen is sitting out on an old country house, and they're discussing, this is an old wood house with a wood porch on it, and they're talking politics or what men talk about. And the guy that lived there, he had an old dog, an old hound dog, we call him, and it was making a noise, just a groaning. And he said, what's wrong with your dog? And said, well, he's laying on a board, and said it's got a nail sticking up through it a little bit, and it's kind of pushing into him. And he said, well, why don't he get up and move? And said, well, it's not hurting him that bad. And see, I think that's what people, they don't want something other bad enough, and especially today, I see the young kids that grow up, they don't have to need for money, most of them. And I love Walmart. I got the Sam Walton Award one time, and I called them. I said, I got an award and all this stuff and all this attention. I mean, I didn't do nothing. And I said, oh, yeah, you was nominated. And we reviewed them and said, it's your community services. But when we walk in Walmart, and I love them because I own their stock, and Sam Walton, people say they don't pay enough and hear all these negatives. But there's 1.5 million people work for Walmart, and 50% of them never had a full-time job. So, not many of us started off at the top. I started off at $1.20 an hour, dreaming big because I was writing these books, and I knew I was going to have it all. And my wife, she always told me, I believe you, but don't tell nobody. So they think you're crazy. And so later we was able to laugh about that. I mean, I don't mean to brag or anything, but you dream of owning a gold Rolex when you're making $1.20 an hour, or you in a black Mercedes and $1 million. I mean, are you crazy or are you crazy? But I had read those books. I was working one summer, 75 cents an hour. My parents didn't know what I was doing. I was sneaking off, and I was working in a coal mines, pulling mining steel out. And it's a long story, but it's dangerous. It's probably 3 foot high. You couldn't stand up, no safety equipment or nothing. They lock the men up in jail for doing that today. But later I started to work for a guy. He helped start a bank, and he was one of them that hired me. But anyway, I'm reading, and something just like somebody speaking said, Don, these poor old men like your daddy, they killing themselves making a living crawling around these mines. All them books you've been reading, them people, they're making money using their mind. And I was just determined. I'd tell my cousins, we'd play, and I said, I'm going to be a banker. Be a banker. You don't know nobody works in a bank. And make you start thinking. I said, well, somebody had to work in a bank. I said, if you know what you're doing, you learn what you're doing. And I was determined. I was absolutely determined. And of course, I had to take a job at a finance company. $1.15 an hour, $1.20. And halftime, we worked overtime. We was on a training program, but I loved it. I put on a necktie, first time I wore a necktie, and was an outside collector. They call you assistant. Was on a training program. They called it. The law let them pay halftime. The girls work in the office, tellers and all. If they didn't let them work now, if they worked above 40 hours, they got time to have. Us people working outside, we was in a training program, and we got halftime. We called it Chinese overtime. In other words, you made $1.20 an hour. All your overtime, you got 60 cents an hour. But they had all these courses I could write. When I finished one, I could write off and get another. It was on economics and finance and human relations and all this other stuff. And boy, I think I'm getting education. It didn't cost me nothing. So I just saw myself in those positions. And I got a letter somewhere from CIT, and I was the youngest branch manager in their history. And I just knew I was going places. You can call it ego or whatever, but I knew good as anything.
I know this is music to Ann's ears, so I'm going to bring her in. As she comes in, I just want to acknowledge a few more Napoleon Hill certified coaches in the conversation. You got Johnny Lloyd there, so good morning, Johnny. And then we've got Doretha is there, Ruby. We got all kinds of folks joining in. So, Miss Ann, what are your thoughts about this conversation?
Do you really want to know? I am Johnny. Good morning. Good morning, Johnny, Doretha, all of you joining us. We are so excited to have Don Green sharing with us this morning. We have a strategic partnership, the International MasterMind Association and the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We have a strategic partnership whereby we're encouraging all of our listeners, regardless of when you hear this podcast, to please go to naphill.org and consider signing up for the Napoleon Hill certification. Johnny Lloyd has gone through it. Leffert Fate, myself, and many others from all over the world have participated. And this is when you really get to have an experience with Don Green and the staff to really, really drill down into these principles and this philosophy. Key is that you must decide. And that's the decision that I've made as a part of this program today to promote Don Green and the foundation, because when you really begin to understand the backstory, Don's backstory, the foundation backstory, Napoleon Hill's backstory, and Don, you mentioned about Clement Stone. A lot of us don't really understand the role that Clement Stone played in the life of Napoleon Hill. Could you speak to that for us for a second, please?
Yeah, it goes back to hear him tell it. He grew up as a 6-year-old in Chicago, on the bad side of Chicago, selling newspapers. He used to get beat up because of the bigger boys. And he said, but he told us one day at lunch, he said the last thing his mom did was she raised him as they get to the foot of the bed, and he got his nose blooded that day. They thanked the Lord before they went to bed. He started with $100, but he was Give, Think, and Grow Rich, and he read it, and he said it aligned so much with what he was already doing. He gave every salesman that that worked for him, and he said their sales grew so much that it was unbelievable. So everyone that went to work for his insurance company got that book. So in '52, Napoleon was invited he was in semi-retirement, living in California. He was invited to speak at a dental convention, and Mr. Stone happened to be there, and they hooked up for 10 years to promote the philosophy. And of course, Mr. Stone did not need the money. He was just trying to give back. In fact, his assistant told me that wrote the checks that he gave away somewhere like $350 million while he was active, and lived to be he was 100, and he was 100, and I attended his funeral, and they were Paul Harvey there, and he was a conservative Republican, Nixon's cabinet, Robert Schuller, Dr. Jack Early, and other people. He gave Robert Schuller his first $1 million to cite the Lighthouse Cathedral in California, one time the biggest church in the country.
I don't know if did we.
We still have him?
Okay, I think he may have frozen. Don, I think you may. Okay. Well, while we're waiting for him to come back, I just want to just encourage all of our listeners to really study the life of Clement Stone and the impact he has had on all of us. Why? Because of his relationship with Napoleon Hill, it changed and really strongly impacted Napoleon Hill's teachings, which are now impacting us. And one of those teachings for myself deals with the decision to learn how to sell. You see, before we think about a desire for money, how do you get that money? When you go back to the 6 keys or the 6 steps to riches, how much do you want that desire? Decide how much do you want. Decide when and where and how you're going to get that money. Now, once you make all of those decisions, guess what? You must decide to learn how to sell, regardless of what you sell, either a product or service or yourself. If you're not willing to decide to learn how to sell, then chances are you're not going to make that money. Don, thank you for coming back with us. But my other question, really, one of the books that Napoleon Hill and the two of them wrote together deals with success. Can you share any of those? And I know we're talking about the decision chapter here and the decision principle. But I think that as our listeners decide to get deeper into this philosophy, it will help to cement these principles in their lives and help them better connect to their desire. So, any particular books that you can think of between the two men that they co-authored together?
Well, they co-authored Success of Positive Mental Attitude, and I'll tell you what that book's done for us. My friend Polly, I was in the office one day, and I had a person. I'm on the board of University of Virginia, and have been for some 20 odd years, consecutive. And my secretary, she came back, assistant. She said, "Don, there's a person from Nigeria on the phone." I said, "Well, I can't talk right now," but I said, "Won't you just give them my cell number, because it's almost quit time and I'm gonna go walking. I'm gonna go home, change clothes, and walk, and I'll be happy to talk to him." And she said, "Be careful. We have a lot of scams on the internet from Nigeria." And I said, "Okay." And so he called when I was working, and he says, "Don, this is Polly in Nigeria." And I said, "Well, Polly, how you doing?" And he said, he calls me Mr. Don, and years later, he still calls me Mr. Don for some reason. And he said, "Mr. Don, will you listen to my story?" I said, "Sure, Polly, I'll listen to your story." He's 14, living on the streets in Nigeria, in Lagos, or the large city. And he said he read The Success of a Positive Mental Attitude by Stone and Hill. And he went from there to selling used sandals. He had $3. He sold some sandals and he bought some more. Then he got some used clothes, sold the used clothes. Then he saved up his money and he bought some new clothes and resold those. And then someone noticed him selling, offered him a job as a sales rep for a drug company, legitimate drugs. And he saw that they were making a lot of money, so he started his own. Today, he's the largest distributor of malaria drugs in the world. His company is called Neros, Neros. And if you go to Nigeria, the soccer stadium is named Neros after he donated the money. He gave a lot of money. And I told him, I said, "Polly," I said, "Mr. Stone wrote a couple of books of himself." "I didn't know that, Mr. Don." I said, "Yeah, he wrote a book, Believe and Achieve, and he wrote one, His Success System Never Fails." I said, "We own the copyright."
Now that's my favorite. Wait, Don, that one is my favorite. So I just want to put a pin in it for 1 second. For those of you that are listening, and you really, really want to study success in business, the book that Don Green is talking about right now is entitled "The Success System That Never Fails."
Yeah, it's
Go ahead,
it's an excellent book, and he said, I didn't know that, Mr. Don. I said, well, I'll tell you. I said, I always carry pencil and paper with me, but I know, and you would have a long address, and you said you on our website, you send me your mail address, and I'll send those two books to you when I go in tomorrow. And so when I come in, I needed to run the emails out and said, here's your friend Polly, here's his address. So I sent him those two books. I sent them with FedEx. I don't remember now, but it was probably $100 to send them. But you know, I thought that, like the little sign on my where I eat my breakfast every morning, it just says, God, show me someone I can help today. In Jesus' name, amen. And the day's not going to get by that I don't send someone a book. I mean, or when y'all started, I make me a couple of notes, and I'll ask myself, if I done anything today that stands out? And if I don't, I'll find somebody that I've made a note left on my desk to send them a book or thank you card or something or other. So I don't know how long it was, whether it was a week or 10 days or what. I just thought, you know, I did a good deed and I didn't expect to hear nothing back. He called one day and said, Mr. Don said, I've been in Laos and North Korea. And he named off half a dozen places. And it's for the company. And said, and I got back, said, them two books was there. Said, you said you was going to send them. I said, Polly, my mama told us when we was growing up, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, you just be sure you do what you said. I told you I'd send you those two books, and I sent them the next morning. And he said, talked a little bit. He said, I want to wire you some money. I said, now, Polly, I said, we're a nonprofit. We don't solicit money, but we do get money and we won't turn it away. He said, I am going to wire you $100,000. He wired $100,000. And by then I got his phone number and I called to thank him. And I said, Paulie, you ought to come visit me. You ever come to the United States? Oh, yeah. He said, I got a daughter's an attorney for Verizon, lives in Maryland. He said, when I come see her, he said, I'll come see you then, and I'll bring you another $150,000. He said, that would make $250,000. And he did. And of course, he's visited me several years. 2 years he missed. One was last year with the pandemic. He's coming this year. And one was a pandemic. And 1 year I wrote a letter to the Nigerian government, but he couldn't get his visa. He couldn't leave the country and get his visa renewed. And but when he comes to see me, he always gives me $10,000 in cash. And said, now you've helped me. You've helped me. But I give it to Zane. We put it in an account. I don't need the money, but he's kind of him. But we never know when we do an act of kindness. I never expect anything back. But when you don't hear something back directly from it, indirectly you do, because it makes you feel good. My mind is free. My mind is about as free as I can get of jealousy, hatred, and envy. And when you get rid of those things, you can become the most creative. I mean, you got the imagination of a little child. And it was Einstein that said, imagination is more important than knowledge. And you can't be creative if you've got hatred and jealousy occupying your mind, because our mind is complicated, but it's also simple. It can only hold one train of thought at a time.
All right.
So
exactly. Don, thank you. Hold 1 second. Let me get Peter and Galen back, because what I want to do at this point is I have this smile on Galen's face. We had a conversation before the program started, I think on Wednesday, Galen, when I was sharing with him how this would go. And so with that thought in mind, I want to turn the program back over to our host, Mr. Galen Bingham.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm actually going to throw this right back to you, Ms. Ann, because I'd love to just share how these principles and the stories that Mr. Green is sharing, they tie right back into this annual meeting that you host every year. So if you could talk a little bit about that annual meeting, that would be great.
Just a little?
Just a little.
Like Don Green, when you give me a subject that I love talking about, like the Napoleon Hill Foundation and these principles and this annual meeting, for many of you that know me, you know I can go. But it's something that I believe in so strongly. And I go back to the decision principle, even though Galen asked me to talk about the annual meeting. I think that the annual meeting would not be an annual meeting. There would not be such a thing if I had not had a problem in my life and did not know how to solve it. And that is when I was introduced to this book and began to read it at 9 p.m. December 31st, 1979. And as a result of that, and going through some self-inventory, examples in the book, and forming my first mastermind group, and then now that mastermind group turning into 10 people that turned into 10, 20 plus mastermind groups, and we formed the International Mastermind Association. I just want to also thank you, Don Green, for your support all these years, for what we're doing in terms of helping to support the foundation with these principles. But I think that it's critically important for each of us to understand that procrastination stops you from making decisions. And the decision to have a goal in our lives and be held accountable through our mastermind group led us to track our goals on an annual basis. And that caused us to create what we call an annual meeting for your life. This is not a conference. It is an annual meeting for your life. And basically what we did was we took the questions that Napoleon Hill asked us in the self-inventory section of the book, and then we began to ask each other those questions, and we required each other to write the answers to these questions, and we would hold each other accountable month after month after month, and then year after year after year, until we began to look around and we didn't realize the success that we were having. Other people began to realize our success and asked us if they could participate with us. And that participation led to this annual meeting that we host now every year in Boca Raton at the Embassy Suites. And at that annual meeting, we bring our life in writing in 10 different areas of our lives. And this year coming up, it's going to be held on January the 7th and the 8th, 2022. And Don, I would like to ask you publicly, I know your schedule is busy, but we would love for you to join us. We'll talk about that offline if you're able to do that, because I think that what this philosophy has given so many of us, even our children and now our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, are able to share this philosophy. But let me just go real quickly through the 10 areas that we focus on in our lives: our spiritual, our family, our financial areas, our health, our education, the personal development area of our lives, our business or our career, the recreation, the creative, and the civic area of our lives. We set goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And right now I am in my 40th year. Goals I set 40 years ago, I'm living those goals. I'm living that life I designed, and I had no idea what I was doing, no idea whatsoever. And that's why for me, I'm so excited about teaching this philosophy, and I keep going back to being a certified coach with the foundation, because again, like Napoleon Hill said, it is the spirit of service. It's not the money. The money draws us to this philosophy, but it's who you, who are you willing to become in order to serve? But in order to serve, you must go through the trials, the tribulations, and the challenges of understanding how to get through, to get to. So that's the information about the annual meeting. You can go to our website at internationalmasterminders.com, or even you can go to Eventbrite. And so we're very excited for another opportunity to have a place where people can come and be held accountable. Galen?
Fantastic. And Dr. Peter, I know that you've been to the annual meeting a few times. I've been there with you, and I know Don Green is kind of speaking your language around helping people shift their mindset to whatever the higher level is, whatever's closer to being their purpose for being here on this planet. What are your thoughts, and what questions do you have for Mr. Green?
Yeah, first of all, Galen, I love the philosophy that Ann just spoke about in the accountability meeting of being held accountable, being surrounded by like-minded individuals, and even inserting your imagination into now becoming more decisive as a result of your will and desire that Don had mentioned earlier. So Don, I want to bring you back in and dive into that area of decision. You talked about the will and the desire that individuals need to have in order to execute on those decisions. I want to have you talk about that a little bit more, what that's looked like in your life, or maybe even what you have seen from being around the foundation, and especially around this will and desire to accomplish what you're setting out to do. So I was hoping you can give us some great examples about that. Looks like he dropped off for a second there, Galen. But the reason I wanted to ask him about that will and desire perspective, because I coach quite a lot of individuals, and one of the questions that I always come back to is, how willing are you to accomplish this goal? What does the desire look like deep for you to be able to accomplish it? Because we don't often reflect on that as much as we need to, which may insert procrastination, as this chapter talks about, which may insert hesitation or being a little lackadaisical around that. And I know that reflection, the introspection about your own will and desire is so important for us to dive deep into. What does that look like for you a little bit there?
Yeah, that's a question that I spend a lot of time focused on with my clients as well. Very, very often, for me anyway, people don't want to get started, and therefore they will procrastinate because they can't see the entire process. They can't see how everything works. And because I don't know how I'm going to address every issue that might come, I'm not going to get started. And I think one of the things that Napoleon Hill talks about is have your burning desire and then just take action, right? Just get started. Because very often, once you take that first step, then the second step is just a little easier. Once you take that second step, then the third step becomes obvious. And then after you've taken the third step, you might as well take the fourth step, because if you're not careful, you might trip over it, right? But it's that first step that people struggle with because they can't anticipate everything that might come their way. I am sure that Don Green has seen that. Napoleon Hill has definitely been through that. And I'd love to bring you back on as well, because you were talking a little bit about some of the things that Napoleon Hill has been through that we don't necessarily think about when we just read his book and a little blurb about his biography. We don't know the challenges that he's had to overcome, and that life isn't as easy as we make it out to be.
It's not a crystal. Yes, thank you, Galen. But I want to go back to what Peter, and I just put in the chat as you were talking, Peter, and asking the question. What Don Green was sharing with us before we got to this point in the program is that it's not just a desire. It must be a burning desire. It must be a definite purpose for which you are aspiring. Because if it's not something that you go to bed with and you wake up with, then chances are you're not going to have the faith, the self-confidence, the all of those things, those principles that are required to actually achieve. Now, going back to Napoleon Hill and some of the challenges and struggles and the decisions he made, I remember one story he shares about when the Chicago fire took place. His business and his office and his books and many of his writings all burned in that fire. When you really get into his life and the stories that he shares about his own life, it really gives us a better idea of the challenges. 2, 3, 4, 5 different businesses that failed. So when we think about our own struggles and challenges, and we know, and that's why we were talking earlier, Galen, about when we come on and we're talking to our guests and we're talking to each other and we share a point, that point, we must cement it with a story of our own or someone else's trials, tribulations, or successes, because then it has a tendency to burn. And this is why, when listening to our guests, Don Green shares story after story after story after story after story. And we can listen for hours to the stories. But what happens afterwards, those principles are now cemented in our mind and our heart and our spirit. So when we get to our own challenge and you can pull back and pull forward, if you will, those stories to help you get through to your own desire. But I want to go back to a question that was asked in the chat about the book while we're waiting for our guest to come back on. The reason why Success System That Never Fails was one of my favorite books, even though I love the others, that Clement Stone wrote in collaboration with Napoleon Hill, is because it was one of the first times I read a sales book. That's what I call that particular one, because he's a phenomenal salesman, that helped me better understand why my business was not working. And one of the stories he shared is that he was having a challenge. This is Clement Stone was having a challenge. And he said, I had to sit down and really look at the fact that I was busy every day. But why was it that my sales were not related to, the activity? And then he started tracking his time. And I want to challenge you, as you listen to us today, track your time and see if you're really investing time in your daily disciplines and your daily activities on the things you claim are most important to you. And he said, so what he found was that, he tracked his time from the time he got up in the morning. And so he'd get to work. And of course, you got to have that conversation with your team. And then the wife calls and she says, honey, can you stop by the cleaners on your way home? And you say, sure. A buddy calls and he says, hey, listen, can you go to lunch? And you say, sure. And then in the afternoon, one of your friends call and say, look, we're leaving early, maybe we can get 9 holes in. And you say, sure. And then at the end of the day, you don't realize that an 8-hour day, you only put in an hour's worth of work. So how many sales calls did you make? How many sales did you close? And then you track that day after day after day, and you get to 30 days. Right now, we're doing a 30-day test in our McNeil Factor Clarity MasterMind. And just being our guest is back. Morning.
Yeah, so we've just been talking about some of the things that you shared with us already, Mr. Green. This has been an incredible conversation. I would love to kind of get your final thoughts around the importance of this philosophy, the importance of this formula. Why have you dedicated so much of your life to championing this around the world?
Well, it's just a good feeling and know that you made a difference in someone else's life. Of course, I'm an investor, being a banker, and I get asked all the time. I mean, on a daily basis, just I got a little money. I know you're an investor. I know you. What do you invest in? And I would give the same advice to my family or whatever. I said the best investments any of us ever make goes back to what we're talking about, making a decision, and that is to invest in ourselves. I could sit here and tell you, if you'd have done what I did, if you'd bought 1,000 shares of Microsoft a couple of years ago, you would have made $250,000 on that one stock. You'd done the same thing with Apple. You could have done the same thing with Amazon. I don't give petite people because, in a sense, it's opinion. I read Wall Street, Forbes, Warren Buffett, people who's been successful, and then I analyze it and determine my own risk, and I make my own. But when people learn to make their own decisions, and that's what the course is about. When we start listening to people's opinions, they say, I wonder, has anybody ever figured out who they say are? They say this or they say that. I never have figured out who it is. They're giving you their opinions. We have to learn to make decisions on following the steps of planning and organized thinking and accurate thinking and principles that we can learn. And then we make our own decisions. And it's not that they'll always be right, but if you will learn a lesson that I learned, that failure is not permanent until it's accepted. I mean, I've done some things even in investment things. One of them, I love art, and I made considerable amount of money in art. And one time I met a professor from from Moscow University through the University of Virginia, and he got talking about art. His stepfather was the guy that did the artwork for the movie War and Peace, and I got to buy his art, and I didn't need the money, but a friend in the art business convinced me to send quite a few of them to. It was Sloan and Kenyon's big art gallery up in Washington D.C. area, Bethesda, Maryland, I believe it was, and I went up, and I'd sent about, I don't know, a dozen, and I just wanted to go through the process. I know they serve wine and cheese, and it's a social gathering. Well, I sat there and watched some of that stuff sell. Some of it didn't even sell for what I gave for it. And I thought, dog, are you stupid or what? I didn't put a minimum in the contracts, and I just laughed it off because it didn't break me. But it wasn't the process I thought. And so the next time I didn't quit selling art. Next time I put art in an auction, like Sotheby's or whatever, I put a minimum. I said, this has got to bring this many thousands, or you ship it back. And so I learned from it. But we have to learn to make our own decisions. And when we say, I just have a hard time deciding, no, you don't have a hard time. You made a decision not to do nothing. That's a decision in itself. But you have to make the courage to make the right decision and have the faith that you can carry it out and not listen to opinions or what people they say or whatever, and learn to make decisions on the information, because he'll tell us over and over again when the people said something other, what are you basing it on? Where are you getting that from? And we have to learn to analyze. He said, you got useful information, and you got a lot of stuff. It's just basically junk that you just set aside. And the topic's not just thinking; it's accurate thinking. And if our thinking is simply based on other people's opinions, it's real easy to get in trouble. And then you can say, boy, he gave me a Don Green. He told me to buy this, and I've lost my shirt. So we have to learn to make our own decision and assume responsibility.
I think that's a big part of it. I think, even Napoleon Hill says that one of the biggest sources of failure is listening to other people and being so easily swayed. So I'd love to just go around and just get some final thoughts from you, Dr. Peter. What are your final thoughts from this conversation? How can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you directly?
Yeah, so many pearls, so many gems. Don, thank you so much for sharing your insight, your stories with us, for sure. One of the things that just jumped off was listening to Ann and Don talk about decisions that have been made, the will and the desire, as I mentioned earlier. But then also, I think Ann mentioned, what are the distractions that are preventing you from following through on those decisions, right? On a day-to-day basis, what are some of the distractions? Ann gave some examples of them, but I even go so far as a TV or social media or friends calling, talking on the phone. These distractions that sometimes happen on a day-to-day basis that eat away at our time and challenge your will and your desire, right? To accomplish those goals, to be more decisive. So now, those of you who are listening and watching, reflect on those on a daily basis, at a day-to-day basis. Think back on them. And now how can you do better? How can you implement better moving forward? Very excited to be here. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach. You can catch me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAjames. My latest thing I have going on, of course, is the 21st Century Leadership Development and Mastermind coming up very soon. If you are a leader or know of a leader who wants to take their business and or career to the next level, you gotta check out this series here that's coming up. The information is in the chat there, of course, and let me know if you have any questions. Galen, right back to you.
Fantastic, boy. I love what you said about just making sure that you're tuned into the information that's around you so that you can make the best possible decisions. Speaking of decisions, just looking in the chat, Misty Campbell has said that she's just signed up for step 1 to get certified with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So a great example of taking action. It's one thing to listen to great advice. It's another thing to listen to that advice and actually act on it. So, Ms. Ann, what are some things that you got from this conversation, and how can people get a hold of you?
Okay, so I decided to pull out my pad, and I do have pages here of of aha moments and comments from Don Green. I'm just going to mention just a couple of them. Well, one was from you, Galen. You said smooth as soap. I'd never heard that one before. But when you think about the decision and your decision to decide, and I'm not going to go through his comments. My really big aha from this program is to drill down into the decisions that are required to achieve your desire by any means necessary, but also deciding to have accountability on those decisions. And I would encourage you, connect with the foundation and drill deeper into this philosophy, because it will help you become that which you need to become to achieve those goals. In addition to that, continue to connect with us. You can reach me at annmcneil.com. I would challenge and encourage you to participate with us on the 31st of July 2021 for our mid-year for your life. This is your life. Decide to do something today, such as be held accountable for your goals in writing. And if you want to know more about that, you can connect with me at annmcneil.com, or you can connect with me at the International Masterminders.com, where we support this philosophy for over now 40 plus years, and it has made a tremendous difference in our lives. But how do you live this philosophy every single day? That's what these programs and platforms and processes is about, helping you to make the decision, just one small decision. And I'm going to challenge you to decide to connect with me by going to annmcneil.com and register for the mid-year for your life. This is just a mid-year check-in about your goals and how you use this philosophy to achieve your desire. And if you're interested in getting the 6 keys, you can text the word "and" at 55678. That's text the word "and" ANN at 55678. Thank you, Galen.
Yeah, this has been an incredible conversation, to say the least. One of the things that I got from this is something that Don said at the very beginning of the conversation. He just talked about the courage that it takes to make a decision. And it's not that it takes courage to make a decision. It takes courage to say, this is what I'm going to do. Because we're always making the decision, even if the decision is to allow other people to decide for us. But to actually put a claim in, to publicly say, this is the course of action, this is the thing that I'm going to accomplish, that takes courage. So many people would rather just sit back and see what comes. Success never comes accidentally. There is no such thing as accidental success. There might be opportunities that come along that you hadn't planned for, but usually to have predictable success, you've got to be prepared and you've got to make a decision. So I just want to thank Mr. Green for coming on to the show. My name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership strategist, and lots of different ways to get a hold of me. One of the most fun ways to get a hold of me is by tuning into the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership podcast. We are on every platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. If you can find a platform that we're not on, let me know, because I got some people to talk to. We've just closed season 1, so the episode that's out right now is a recap of season 1, and it is amazing. We get to hear from all the people that we interviewed, and as we get ready for season 2, and definitely be a part of that. But again, I want to bring Mr. Green back on the screen, because I'd love to just thank him for this incredible conversation. This has been absolutely life-changing. You've heard a lot of incredible gems, but the key is not just listening. What are you prepared to do with the information that you've heard? What action are you prepared to take? Because if you're not taking any action, then this was just an entertaining way to spend a Saturday morning. I hope that you will do more with it. And with that, I want to thank each of our co-hosts, and I want to thank Mr. Green for joining us. But I also want to thank our listeners, and for those who joined us live. We are here each and every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about the principles of Napoleon Hill as articulated in the book Think and Go Rich. Next week, oh my gosh, next week we're going to have an amazing guest. You guys may remember one of our co-hosts from a few months back is Pegeen. She is going to be coming back as our guest, and I can think of no one more effective at making and acting on decision than Pegeen. She's got so many businesses. She's got a foundation. She is a Hall of Fame speaker. You know, absolutely, your life will absolutely be changed. And I would double dog dare you to come back next week and bring some friends with you. So, with that, I want to thank you again and wish you well until next time. Hope that you think and go rich. Take care.